one spirit. Let's gently quiet ourselves for a time of meditation. Let us take one deep centering breath together as I lead. Here we go. Breathe in and hold it. And as you slowly let that air out, letting go of those things that no longer serve you today, blessing them and allowing it to move forward so that that breath can bless others. Breathing in the breath of life, we receive that breath that has blessed others back to us. As we get still and quiet and present, and in the very presence of being, we know, we sense, we hear that still small voice. We know in the very presence of the present, we are in the midst of the Almighty. We know wherever we are, Spirit is, and there is absolute love. Let us take one deep centering breath in and affirm that to our soul. Breathe in and hold it, and slowly, ever slowly, letting that breath out, allowing the body to relax even deeper, the mind to open up to a greater presence, the heart to expand to a greater depth. Spirit, we give thanks for the abundance that is. We give thanks for that abundance in the physical and in the spiritual. We know that there is more than we can even fathom in our grandest imagination. As we center ourselves right here, right now, we open our heart to a greater depth of love, a love that we have never experienced, a love that we are willing to do so, a love that grants us permission to be patient, to be kind, to allow others to go before us, to allow our business opportunities to expand, to allow our families to come together, to allow change to occur for the greater good, to allow us to release what no longer truly serves us, to let go of thoughts and feelings that weigh us down and prevent us from our greater good. God, we ask today that our mind is open to the light, to the divine idea that we choose today to take within each and every one of us as substance and manifest the greater good in our world, the greater good for our personal life, the greater good for our community, the greater good for our state, our United States, our world. A love that is beyond comprehension. A love so great that healing in the very moment is done. That judgment no longer exists. that meeting in the middle to resolve issues is done, where we can agree to disagree and be friends, to have a greater awareness that we are all connected through divine spirit, that we are all one source, one life, one love. We are willing to be humble today and come from a place of gratitude, where our woes no longer exist, where we acknowledge in great things that we have awakened today, that we have clothes today, that we have food today, that we have each other today, and that we know that we are never alone, that wherever we are, you are, and all is well. We give thanks for the absolute love that exists in, through, and around us, that prepares us at every given moment of our day. It presents us with the gifts of faith, of hope, of strength, of order, of power, of patience, of tolerance, of thanksgiving, and above all, love. And so it is. Amen and amen.
Let's all join together in reciting the Our Father. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from error. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Oh, I guess that's me. I was looking at the screen. I have to follow direction here. All right. Just a little more time is all we're asking for. Just a little time could open closing doors. Just a little uncertainty can bring you down. And nobody wants to know you now. Nobody wants to show you how. So if you're lost and on your own, never surrender. And if your path won't lead you home, never surrender. And when the night is cold and dark, you can see my light. 'Cause no one can take you away your right to fight and never surrender. With a little perseverance, you can get things down. without the blind adherence that has conquered some. And nobody wants to know you now. Nobody wants to show you how. So if you're lost and you're on your own, never surrender. And if your path won't lead you home, never surrender. And when the night is cold and dark, you can see my light. 'Cause no one can take you away your right to fight. Never surrender. And when the night is cold and dark, you can see my light. 'Cause no one can take away your right to fight and never surrender. A little more time is all we're asking for. Never surrender. You believe in me and never surrender. The time is right for all you're asking for. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to adjust a few things. Because how can I speak to you about being in the middle if I'm not in the middle, right? Truly. Beautiful, beautiful song selection, by the way. So how do we stay centered? How do we function in the middle of God and God in the middle of us? I mean, really, how do we do that? So I'm going to ask you again just to be mindful and centered. Let us affirm that affirmation that we did in the beginning. You don't have to find the slide because I'm going to repeat it, and then I'm going to ask you to stand and really affirm it for yourself. So the affirmation is, I am centered in the love and light of God. I am centered in the love and light of God. If you'll stand and really own that from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head, or the mountaintop, if you will, together. I am centered in the love and light of God. One more time with a little more power. I am centered in the love and light of God. And so it is. And I believe that for each and every one of you. So as not to have to stand throughout my talk, you can all sit down. You know, when Charles and Myrtle were, and one of my favorite metaphysicians and also a physician is Emily Cady. And one of the things that always was resounding to me, way before I even knew I was supposed to be a ministerial student, and just a speaker of the truth, was that when we affirm something, when we know something, when we are sharing our foundational truths, to say it with gumption, to say it with strength, to really own the truth of who we are, what we believe, and how to share it with others. To not say it passively, to not think, well, maybe I am the light and love, but you know, on days when I'm not feeling that great, maybe not, whatever, you know. To really own it, even in the midst of all of that. So how do we move through the beginning to the end, and here we are in the middle? How do we stay in the center of God? And one of the Bible verses that came to me was, I believe that, first off, the Bible is kind of the journey of the soul, and it's really, as a metaphysician, it's moving beyond the written word and really understanding in a larger scope what those words are telling me. And I like to use object lessons or visuals, if you will, because that's how I learn. I'm also a tactile learner. So, they chose a vine, a tree, what have you, and it was trying to get people to understand back then, to be fully centered and immersed and in the middle of spirit or God. You can't be just, let's say this is the branch. You can't just be a branch out swirling around in no man's land. You need to be connected to the vine, the tree, some living force in order to exist and move and be fully present and thriving and abundant and all that there is. So, that is what this verse is telling. Abide in me, but I in you. See, it's like a two-way street. You're not just in God, but God's in you. And how cool is that to know that? And so they moved on to say, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, as my explanation here, unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. So we can certainly exist and move along, but are we, if we aren't really connected, or at least know that we are, how can we fully be abundant and thriving and healed and prosperous and happy and joyful beyond the mountaintop? How can we do that if we're not connected within God and God within us? It's a two-way street. It's a win-win. It's a meeting in the middle, if you will, so to speak. So, we begin our journey in the center of God through prayer and meditation. Oftentimes, for me, I learned that I like to, before I get out of bed, I like to read my readings, because once I step out of bed, it is full throttle. I'm like the Energizer Bunny. I am off to the races. I'm ready to go. But if the moment that I wake up, I take my phone, I do my daily word reading. There's another reading I like to do by Richard Rohr in Centering Prayer, and just pause for a moment to just be present and to take in those words of advisement for my day. I feel really connected. I feel charged, filled up, fueled up. And I remember way back when, the first time I went to Unity Village, it used to be called Certified Spiritual Education, or CSC, and you would take these classes. Now they call them something else. They've changed throughout the years. And we were changing classes and walking along, and Unity Village is in Unity Village, Missouri, and on Central Time. So we were walking down one of the sidewalks, and I hear this ding, and all of a sudden the person I was with, thank goodness, knew to pause and said, you need to just pause. I'm like, okay. It was the great unknown. And what came on over the speaker was Charles Fillmore saying the Lord's Prayer. And all of Unity Village, there was a hush. And you could hear Charles's voice getting us centered in our day, getting us to pause for a moment and reaffirm those truths. And he always had a little zinger message that they had recorded, apparently. And then a bell, and everybody was off to the races again. We were in the middle of the presence. We were in the middle to pause I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I had never experienced such a spiritual presence around me in such a great stillness and a collective owning of the truth. And I thought, wow, this is mighty. This is powerful. I can really get into this. So, many moons later, many years later, um, I was asked to look for someone that could lead uniteens. And I thought, well, what in the world is a uniteen? Well, it was a new program in Unity for middle schoolers. And I was like, without hesitation, oh, I'd be interested in that. Can you start the following Sunday? Now, for me, that's really where I started in ministry, is in the middle, in middle school. I get them. I don't know what that says about me, but I get them nonetheless. And because when people would ask, well, what do you do? Oh, I facilitate spiritual education for middle schoolers. And they're like, and I'm like, oh, it's just so cool and awesome. I get to know the coolest things, from skateboarding lingo all the way down to the latest, works of art, in clothing or whatever, or thoughts, what's going on in their world. So I really started ministry in the middle. How cool is that? So anyway, back to, I took a segue around my talk, but truly in the middle is where we really get to do the work. And do we, in the middle of our day, take a moment to pause? Because I don't know about you guys, but once I get started, it is a long list of things to do, meetings, preparation. I do lots of events for our region. I mean, it's an ongoing, it's a counseling session, it's a prayerful session. It just continues on. I'm a church without walls, so it is constant, ongoing. And sometimes I forget and I'm looking, it's already 5 o'clock, and have I taken a moment to just pause in the middle of my day and just get recentered? So I'm mindful of that, to take that moment between 12 and 1 to just, what does that feel like? Let's practice. I'm more interactive in my talks since I was an intern here. So gently close your eyes and let's practice what stillness feels like for 15 seconds. Here we go. Okay, just gently open your eyes. Wow, boy, I see a smile. I see a sense of peacefulness. Thank goodness your clock ticks, because that helped me count 15 seconds. I love that. So, gosh, in 15 seconds, did you feel a shift? Did anybody feel any kind of change? I'm a reader of your faces, and I could see like this peaceful smile, this just like glistening of peace warm over you. So even in 15 seconds, at any given time in 24 hours, can grant you that sense of peace right in the middle. So let me ask you, how many of you in your families were the middle kids? Raise of hands. Okay. So I found out that you guys tend to be peacemakers and pleasers. Sometimes competitive. You're going, yeah. You like to try to fit in, and you're independent, and you like to focus on your friendships. Oh, it's a wonderful place to be. Well, I was an only child for 10 years, so I was all of the above and then some. So, and then I got to be a sister, so that was a cool thing. But even today, being in the middle, sometimes is typically sometimes frowned upon. You know, you're neither the beginning, you're neither the end, you're never first, you're never last, you're just kind of stuck in the middle. And I think for myself, oftentimes the middle is where I really come toe to toe to God. You know, I put my cards out on the table, and sometimes it's going to be a fisticuff situation with my will and God's will. Even the third principle, which I have to be reminded of, which is, by the way, Unity's third principle, is the law of mind action in a nutshell. The thoughts that we hold in our mind produce our world. And we always have a choice. We always have a choice. Despite what's going on in our world around us, either within our family, within our business situation, life situation, we have a choice. And it's called the law of mind action. And it is probably the one step, the one principle that sets us apart perhaps from other faiths, because God and I are one, and through that divine mind and my mind coming together in synergy, I have the choice. I always have the choice of how my world's going to be created, or how I choose to act despite the outward appearance. And that's really super important to remember. I don't have control over all of you. Whether you like me, you don't, maybe so. But what I do have a choice is about myself and how I choose to show up in the world at any given time, even when I'm in the midst, in the middle of any given situation. You know, sometimes, let's face it, being in the middle just stinks. It's hurtful. It's hard. It can be tough, you know, especially if you have a health situation, or you have a new project, or you have a new job, or who's ever been in the midst of moving? I mean, let's be real. Is it smooth? Is it peaceful? Okay, can it just be darn right aggravating? Can I get an amen? All right, now I know we're on the same page. Okay, so it is sometimes in the middle. It's all of that, and it is where God is the greatest. It is where I'm challenged to the nth degree to practice a little more patience, to be a little more hopeful, perhaps to be a little more negative. I mean, Scott, sorry, not to be a, yeah, no, retract that. To be a little more positive, even when I don't feel good, or I feel like I've been wronged. I'm trying to get over a judgment. I'm trying to get over a health situation. You know, way before I was an intern, um, I was with my husband and son, and we were boating, and I always was the first one to up at the front of the boat to, you know, do the ropes. And this particular time, there is no memory. And I remember being at the front of the boat, and I woke up and I was in a hospital, um, and with a concussion and a broken arm, and not really understanding what had occurred, and it never revealed itself and never meant to be. But the point of that brief story was that was the beginning of a new journey. The hard part was the healing. Now, I had just also started as a ministerial student, and you know, perfect timing is everything. And I was in a metaphysical healing class. And I was learning that I do have the power to heal, that through affirmation, positive thought, seeing in an affirmative prayer quickly that I could set my body in motion at hyperspeed. And even my orthopedist would say, they would take x-rays and go, wow, this is healing a little quicker than, your progress is going really well. And I would just sit there humbly and go, okay, it's working, it's working, it's working. I'm a believer, I'm a believer. So, we can get to the end, but it's the middle where we're challenged, where we really meet God on God's terms. And God's terms sometimes is not ours. Okay, let's get to that realization that when we meet God, sometimes it is not on our terms in the way that we wanted it. It is the difference between our will and a greater good. Because we see in our imagination, we just know how it should be. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be this way because it's what? The best way? That's what we think. And yet, if we meet in the middle where toe to toe, fisticuffs, willing to negotiate, but truly willing to be open, to be led. And if you're a leader, it is hard to be led sometimes. It is hard to fall behind and to be taken by the hand. But if we're willing to do that, then what we thought will end up being truly greater than we could ever imagine. One of our powers is the power of imagination. And yet, if we really understand where we sit in the center, in the middle of God, our imagination may be here, but that expansiveness is way beyond. And so we're limiting ourselves when it just wants to be our way. Right? Right. And sometimes we think that our way is the best way until we're shown differently. But I challenge you today to meet God in the middle at any given moment, any given part of your day, your week, your situation. Can family just push us to the middle? The ones that are closest to us challenge us to meet in the middle and be led. Well, be led in faith, to be hopeful, to be trusting. Family, as much as we love them, can really push our button. Can not only open up the envelope, but shred it and shred it and shred it again. And it's in those moments that we're asked in the middle of the story, the middle of that particular journey, to see the higher, to love. And sometimes we must love from afar. Sometimes we must pray from afar. Sometimes we have to see the highest and best when, boy, we have to pause, take a deep breath before we can do that. The greatest mind action, Charles Fillmore said, is prayer. And sometimes when we can't speak from a kind voice, but what we can do is pray from a higher presence in any given situation. When we can be tolerant of those that don't have the same mindset as our own. That we can choose to agree to disagree for the highest and best good. Where we can be open in the middle and realize that if we gather a group of individuals that are diverse, that in the center is truly the great unknown and the great unfolding. We all have a gift. We all are the creations of the Creator. God did not make any junk out there. Only we chose to see less than or not believe in the inheritance that I believe was part of that affirmation. It is in the middle where we decide through the law of mind action, where the events in our life story are going to be the highest and best despite how they turn out. We can choose a smile. We never know what that smile can do. Research and stories have shown a smile to a stranger prevented tragedy. You never know what's going on. Somebody may be dressed to the nines and having the worst day of their entire life, and that smile, that open door, allowing someone to go in front of you on 95, allowing someone that's been waiting to try to get in. Do I have 5 extra minutes to let this person in front? Sure. What's it going to be? Do I have to always be first? So we need to remember the law of mind action, to smile, to trust in a power that is greater than ourselves, to choose to meet in the middle, to be open to the divine, to walk into the divine, in the divine walk in each and every one of you, to always be centered. And when you feel a little to the left or you feel a little to the right, simply pause that 15 seconds and realign yourself with the source, the great source of love and understanding and abundance. And so it is. Thank you so much.